Okay, hello everybody, and we're so glad you're here on the Mindful Mic, and we're even more excited about our guest today, Chad Dunn. Hello, Chad. Welcome to the Mindful Mic.
Hello, Kobe and Grace. Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you're here. I mean, so much to talk about. You're a ranked BMX racer, a CEO, and author. Just you've done a lot, you've experienced a lot,
I
and
sure.
I feel like you have just a lot to tell us. So I'm just going to dive in, and if you could give us a little background and of yourself and set that up, and then
Sure.
we'll go.
Well, coming from a good family, I've got obviously my mother and father still together this day. I've been married for 55 years. Came from Colorado. Came from a hardworking family. My dad was a country guy. Mom was more of a city slicker, so I'm a little bit of the hustling on my mom's side. So going back to the DNA, there was a little bit of adventure, and there's always a little bit about a hustler inside there. So, they just helped create my identity as a young kid. I got into BMX racing, which was competitive. My dad was an athlete as well. So, the hard work and the athletics and competition and everything kind of started developing my identity as a young kid. I started racing BMX bikes at 7 years old when I got my first
Wow.
bike. Was very good, but in Colorado, I grew up in Colorado. So, as I tell everybody, it was kind of limited due to the weather. So I moved to
Right.
Arizona in 1984, where we have a lot of sunshine, and I found out there was some good competition. So ended up racing in Arizona and doing the bike thing, and then went to high school, played football and wrestled. Got injured, then I had to go to physical therapy, and that's kind of where it got me to where I am today. So, when I look at my youth, it was just going through different stages identity of different sports and different competition levels and in different cities and states and kind of seeing. We talked about today culture. I was very fortunate as a young kid. I got to travel around the country racing BMX bikes. So that's kind of one of the big things that I am very fortunate for. But when I talk to everybody, BMX in the sports back in the day was just kind of something that set up who I wanted to be in the future, never giving up, show up early for practice, be a teammate, and those are all qualities that I think kids have to understand now. I never said entitled. I never said entitled because we didn't have that back in the day, right? You had to work for what you wanted. So, again, just a child rearing and bringing up kids at this age, it was all about just developing myself. I got into high school and like I said, I would do sports and got injured. And then I went to ASU and I was exercise science kinesiology. I wanted to do physical therapy. And then doing some sports training. Yeah. But then, life take a little turn. So, you know, uh, getting into trouble, I learned through curiosity. Right? I learned through curiosity, which is one of the things I think all
Like all
kids do.
kids. I was
Yes,
gonna
like
say just all kids, right?
all kids do. Yes,
Yep.
and with the extreme sports back in the days, I also learned through adrenaline. I learned through
Hmm.
dopamine, the feelings that we get, and the things that we have. If I look back at it now, I would probably been diagnosed with ADHD, but we didn't get diagnosed with that back in the day. We were just an overactive kid and go play, go ride your bike around the city or whatever, and have fun, right? So it makes me think as I got older, is about whether labels that were placed upon you or what were you trying to develop at that time? Again, growing up in society nowadays, we put labels on kids all the time and we tell them what they are. And, we try to help them through different classes and programs or whatnot. But I think a lot of this goes back to these kids have to understand that they're going to make their own choices. And that's what I was doing is I got, like I said, nothing was ever harmful. I was never a victim. But then I got into some crime and some drug use and some drinking. I got into all those things, which again, those were just bad choices. Those were just bad choices as I see it now. And so speaking clearly to the kids and speaking clearly to the community, it's success is very simple. It's all about choices, but the
Yeah.
kids are too young to make those impulsive or they make those
Sure.
impulsive decisions and they're not developed yet, and I was one of them. So now how do we push kids to make the right decisions at a young age? That's the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever feel like, getting injured growing up playing all those sports, always having like access to a way to let out that adrenaline, and that drive and adventure seekingness that after getting injured and, sports coming to an end, that you were finding ways to maybe seek that out? Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I always say, like, sports teaches you to either get caught or catch somebody, especially BMX racing or football. It was, the thrill of not getting caught, whether you get in first place and you're getting chased by the second place rider. It is, there's a thrill and there's the adrenaline, the dopamine that we get. Obviously, as my stories, I went to South Phoenix. I started selling drugs. I started using drugs, and I was getting chased by the police and running from the police. It was the same thing. It was just a different opponent, right? It was just a different
Yeah.
opponent.
It's interesting because you talked about, ADHD, and had you known then, what we know now, maybe there would have been some, medication or counseling or something to help out with that. I think about that all the time, especially for myself, that I have 2 kids that are now diagnosed with ADHD. And I feel fortunate that, it's unfortunate that we have to label them, but it's also fortunate that we're able to, so that we can get them the proper care that they need now to help maybe them, so they make those decisions rather than the drinking and the drugs and doing that. And I think, as being a child of the 80s as well,
Sure.
not having those labels, we didn't know what to do with those thoughts or impulses or whatever. So I find it very interesting, kind of how you saying, if I would have known now, then,
Sure.
and perhaps it's like, I look at, going back to the BMX, that was your adrenaline, right? Like, that was
I
your
was
sport, that was your big
stay
dopamine, right?
busy.
Your
Yeah,
high
that's
that
my
kept you
stay busy.
busy. That was your stay busy. And then when did you go? I just kind of want to touch on this really quick. When did you decide? When was that, like, the big
I was
aha moment?
I was 16, 15, 16. So when I got into high school, and I still had more to do, but I was over the BMX stuff. I was playing Pop Warner football. My dad was a football player. So yeah, I mentioned, sometimes too, the kids want to be like their dads, or be like their parents, in one way or the other. I hear a lot of kids, this is just how I grew up. My dad's in a gang, so I want to be in a gang, or, my mom and dad are this. And so I want to be that. My dad was a football player and a cowboy. And, so, hey, maybe I wanted to follow in those footsteps with them all. So I got into football, and then when I was in high school, it was again BMX was my life. I rode every day. I rode my bike every day, but I didn't have time to go partying. I didn't have time to go do different things. But now when you get to high school, you're around different, and I say it's environment, right? Because it's a new place, but really it's environment because it's the new people. For me, environment are the people that you're around. It's not the places that you're at. And so you go there, now you have some kids having fun. I went to a different junior high than everybody. So I kind of mingled into a high school that had little cliques and cliches already. And so I had to try to fit in with everybody, And how do you fit in? Well, most of the time you should do what you want to do. But at that time of growing up, I was trying to please people. I was trying to impress people. You get caught up with the Joneses. I was never a real big drinker, like I said, when I was wrestling. So that was one of the things that helped me is I went to the parties my freshman year, and I think I got drunk one time. I really never did it much. I never smoked weed. I never done drugs in high school. But I was wrestling, which was also another temple for your body, right? So you got to try to lose weight or stay weight and do all that. Obviously, as I get to my junior year and senior year, when things started going a little differently, now you have different extracurricular activities. But then there were some parties that were going on because that's what high schools do. They go hang out at the local burger shop, or they go hang out at the mall, or whatever it was. Nowadays, you see kids vaping all day long, or
Yeah.
you see them on their e-bikes running around it's the same thing. It was just in a different generation. And so at that time, I started to kind of slip. I was too small to play football. I was a quarterback, but my stature at that time, I was 5'2", 120 pounds. There's some big boys when you get to high school, so now it wasn't about the BMX aspect of it all. The size was something that could be restricted for me. That's how I got into wrestling. So now you're at the same weight, you're the same size as somebody. But it wasn't really my thing. So then partying became my thing, and being the popular guy and hanging around the people, throwing the parties, and then again promoting bad behavior, which is not the way to do it.
Are you traveling at this time for BMX as well? And if so, how are you finding the time to party, or is a party on the road?
Well, so we, as a kid, when I was doing all the BMX stuff, we were traveling at 10, 11, and 12, 13, 14 years old. We would go to Vegas, we'd go to different states, and it was different because, at that time, kids, you could let them go run around a little bit, and the moms and dads, they went down to the bar, right? And they were having the cocktails, because they were the team managers and everybody else. And so we were running around through Circus or the casinos in Vegas. Every time we went to Vegas, we're running around just a bunch of kids causing havoc, because we had no adult supervision. But again, none of this was like with any harm. It was just that we were knucklehead kids, having fun, But again, fun earlier can lead you to something else later, as I found out.
And can you expand on that? When did that start leading to? other
Yeah,
things?
yeah. Well, when I went to ASU, obviously, again, kind of like high school, you meet new people, and I'm not doing sports now, so you have a little bit more time on your hand. I knew my studies were going to be exercise science from the very beginning. I wanted to have a minor in Spanish, so I had a friend that was working down in Mexico. You go to a couple of the bars. Hey, kid, first of all, you got to get you got to get the ID, right? The fake ID is the first thing. That's part of the whole college kit was to have the fake ID. So you get the fake ID. You see which bars are going to allow you to go in, and now you're the girls, and that just takes off and it takes its toll. And, next thing you know, you end up at the clubs in Phoenix, obviously Scottsdale, Arizona, where all the glitz and the glamour is, hanging out in Scottsdale as a young kid. And then next thing you know, you're around people that start doing drugs, whether, a lot of it was the cocaines and everything else. I never could do cocaine because my nose was broken so many times from wrestling that I couldn't sniff anything in my nose. So that was always an issue. And so, like I said, I never done drugs in high school, but now at this opportunity that I had is I was going to South Phoenix. Unfortunately, I was the one that got to go down there. And I started, at this time, I was just selling the drugs. So I would go buy it for a cheap rate and I'd take it up to Scottsdale and sell it for double the price. It was life of the drug dealer. I was also helping out the girls with their topless dancing careers and then making sure that they had the drugs to keep them, because now, again, self-esteem issues, they couldn't dance if they weren't under the influence. Right. So now here you're supplying to this group of people. And that's kind of what my environment was. It was the entertainment industry, I never thought that I would get sucked into it until about 2 years into it, I became a drug user. I was smoking crack. I lost my apartment. I was saved many times by my parents who would come and get me and bring me back to the house because my parents, like I said, they've always been there. They knew that wasn't their child. It was just somebody that was making bad choices. Unfortunately, at the age of 18, you're not responsible for yourself. You're responsible for the choices that you make. So they tried to put me into rehab, and they tried to but rehab was not what I wanted. I wasn't ready to quit. I wasn't ready to do it because I was still having fun. I was making money. I was eluding the cops. I was getting chased. I was having adrenaline. I had dopamine coming. Everything that I had when I was a young kid, it was just a different race, right? So now I'm playing the game of life, and we were even taught, there was the board game life, but unfortunately, life's not a game to play. And I was
Right.
playing it. So, that led to one thing or the other. So, I overcame addictions. I was smoking crack and doing, I got 6 DUIs, which again, I'm not proud of, but I have 6 DUIs just because I was always out partying, but I always had to go to work the next day. So I never left my car. Right? I wasn't going to pay $100 to go get a cab and to go do whatever because, again, my rationalization was a little different. I need my car to go to work tomorrow. That's if you make it home, And so it was it was a path of destruction. It really was. But it was with no harm. I was, like I said, I say this over and over again. I was never the victim. I was just a loose cannon. I was making bad choices. Through all my DUIs, they told me that I had to go to alcohol counseling classes, right? And the first thing they do, they call you and they tell you that you're an addict, you're addicted to alcohol, you're an alcoholic. So I believed that I was an alcoholic, right? And so as soon as I get done with those classes, my buddies and I, matter of fact, I got one doing therapy right now today with me right here that we were in alcohol classes together 25 years ago. High school friend, he just had a knee replacement. And so we were talking about the first time that he met Jackie, my wife. She dropped me off at one of these alcohol meetings. And here's my buddy Eddie and I going in there. And, this is 25, 30 years ago that we did this. Obviously, lives have changed for both
Whole
of
different
us.
life together, right?
It's a whole different life. So now we sit here and tell these stories about all. But at that time, when they told us that you're an alcoholic, I'm like, no, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just somebody that likes to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
But they put a
Yeah.
label on me, right? So I wanted to be defined. I didn't believe that. So I kept on drinking.
When did you
Right?
believe it? When did that, is it called rock? I mean, I hear people
Oh,
say there's no such thing as rock bottom. It's so cliche, but when did you
eh,
realize it was a problem? How many years in are we? Yeah.
As I said, I got my 3 DUIs early, through college. Then, I had a friend that was doing some business, and then mind you, this time too, I was just kind of overcoming my drug use. I don't like to use the word addiction anymore. I really don't use that because I've been kind of taught that my whole life is that addict, addiction, even for kids, which I'll kind of go back and we'll kind of hit over here. But really what happened is that, I was making bad choices. I had some high school friends that were taking some drugs back and forth to Hawaii. Right. And I went over there to bring some money back because this was going on. And again, these are high school friends. So as I tell kids, it's the people that we know that get us in trouble. It is. As we become adult, we make good relationships. We meet good people. But you got to be very careful as a kid with who you're going to hang around with, and they might be good then, but they're going to be bad now. I've seen bad then become good now. I'm one of them. So when you look at it, a lot of this is set up by your early teens. Like I said, I have a lot of friends that I still hang around with that are here, I still communicate with. So I went to Hawaii, brought some money back. 3 months later, after I came on my trip, I had the feds at my door. Right. So I got arrested for money laundering, a whole racketeering thing that was going on to this whole drug case out of Arizona and Hawaii. While I was on pretrial release, I was waiting for my life. My life was in limbo. They said it could be anywhere between 20 years to life. It depends on what the judge says and whatnot. So I don't know what's going to happen. So I meet some of my friends and talk about this full 8 weeks in hell, being arrested and going back and forth. So I go to meet my friend at the bar. Obviously, that's the only place I know to go meet somebody else. The bartender come up and she's like, "What can I get you to drink?" And he's like, "Well, what can I do? Let's see, sweetie, what can I, and she's like, "Anyways, what can I get you?" So she had a different personality. When she came back the second time, I told her, I said, "I'm going to marry you." Right. And she said, "Get in line with everybody else." Well, Jackie's my wife now to this day. Right. So Jackie's my wife to this day. So the first day I met her, I said, "I need you." She was a sober bartender. She never drank. Right. And I said, "Well, why don't you drink?" She said, "Because I got to deal with jackasses like you all the day long." Right. And so I started thinking about, like, at that point in time, like, this is the lady. Now, mind you, I got arrested though. So I really don't know what's going to happen. She actually was real. She was real. And that's what I needed in my life. I needed somebody that was real to help me change and somebody that could help me. And I knew she was the one. It could be a teacher. It could be a counselor. This just happened to be a bartender in my situations, which again, you would never think was coming from somebody that's got 6 DUIs, right? So started hanging out with her for 8 months. I tried to get a date with her. She told me no, because I would still go in there and drink, right? Even though I wasn't supposed to, because I was trying to get a date with her and whatnot. Finally, while I was on pretrial release, I got 3 more DUIs. Not good. Not good. Twice.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a time. I was a
Yeah.
ticking time bomb, right? Making bad decisions. My last DUI I got was in 2005. I was watching a boxing match, Arturo Gatti, Floyd Mayweather. We were playing quarters with 151, right? Because all the alcohol and beer was gone. I needed to get home. I drove home that night, and that night I ran into the freeway. My other 5 DUIs were kind of like a bad place, and I could laugh at it now, but like I had a .001 on one of my blood tests that I got DUI for. I got pulled over for going 41 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone one time. I did flip my car once, so there were a couple of them, but this one right here stuck to me because I could have killed somebody. I could have killed somebody, right? And even to this recollection to this day, I still do not. There's a period of blackout time, and I've never blacked out before, right? But except for this specific night. I thought I was going to go see Jackie, but she said, "Man, you called me. It was 3:45 in the morning, and I wasn't even at work anymore," right? So that was the last time that I drank and drove, right? That last time
Wow.
period. Um, Finished my probation, my pretrial release. I got sentenced to 30 months in prison, which the judge said, "Chad, due to your minor involvement, you have a chance to get probation in this case. But unfortunately, you got 3 DUIs, 2 DUIs when you were on pretrial release. So I must sentence you to
So
30 months in
that
prison."
set it back. Yeah.
Yep. And so that gave me my time. Now, I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend at this time, 1.5 years, right? Because I was out in the streets for 2 years fighting my case. I got sentenced. Now, again, this life was very hard. It's very complicated for the kids or for the young adults that get into this lifestyle. It is a challenge every day to go and get drunk, to avoid the police, to go score drugs, to stay sober, to make the right decisions. This is a hard life, right? I didn't know what to do, right? I needed some help. So when Jackie came around, it was very simple. Here's what you're going to do if you want to stay with me. She already had 3 kids. She was a single mom. So I knew I could help her, and I knew she could help me. Um, Got sentenced to 30 months. She dropped me off curbside at the federal marshal's building the night before. And she said, "I hope I see you in 30 months. I love you." Right? I gave her a kiss, and I had to go self-surrender and walk behind these doors of the federal marshal's building, hoping I get to see my girlfriend again. And so people say, Chad, why don't you stress?" Well, because that's stressful situations itself.
So was she kind of your inspiration to get through the time in prison?
Yeah. She was. Obviously we talked about it, and everything was going to be together, and we had a future, and she's going to be there for me, and I'm going to be there for her. When I was in prison, I was there for about maybe a little over 1.5 years or so, And she'd come visit, she'd bring the kids up. But unfortunately, that was hard also for her because it was a 4-hour drive. She had the kids. And not just hard to make it happen physically, but mentally. When she left, she said it was very emotionally draining, having to leave me, or the kids saying, why is Chad staying behind? Because again, remember, they're not my kids, but at the same time, I want to have a family with them. So why are we leaving Chad behind? They were young. I think our little son, I think he was like 2 years old at the time. He didn't know better. My son that was 9 years old, now he's going here and seeing, mom's boyfriend or whatever locked up in prison. Um, but it was good because she saw that they got to see some of that stuff too. But it was just very hard mentally, so hard mentally that after that 18 months or so that we were together, we were talking on the phone one night. I called her because I'd call her every night from prison. And I called her one night and she says, Chad, I can't do this anymore. This is too tough. This is hard on me. She said, unfortunately, I didn't put myself in prison. You did, and I still have my life to live. I have to take care of my 3 kids. I have to take care of my house. She's a single mom busting her ass to make it happen, you know?
So you did your thing in prison, and is that,
Yep.
do you think that ended up being a good thing for you? Kind of,
Prison
got you
was the best.
sober?
Prison was the best thing for me. And
Yeah,
I tell
I've heard
anybody
that
that
before.
yep, anybody that goes into the right mind, again, like I said, I was never the victim. Right. And so I went in there knowing what I had to do. I already had some support cast on the outside. My family's been there for me. My guys I work with, and my job was still ready for me when I got back, which is very key, part of transitioning from prison back into society. I had my wife, I had Jackie, my girlfriend there, and we had the family. I had everything lined up until that day. Right. Then there was a wrench that was thrown in it. But I sat there over many a nights, counting hours, counting days, counting months. And I knew that no matter what, that Chad, this change was going to be for you. It was for you. You had to do this. You had it with Jackie or without Jackie. I knew that I had to do it. I just didn't know if I could do it. Right. That was so getting released from prison, I was going to get released to her and the kids. Unfortunately, I got released, or fortunately, I got released to my parents. But I didn't need to be with my parents because, again, they were always somebody that could help me, right, to get me out of trouble. I was 30, about 29 at this time or whatever. I'm a latter adult. Nobody wants me living with their mom and dad at this time. So, but I had to, I had to go with the program. I was the one that got myself in trouble. So I had to figure this out. My parents came up to get me from prison the day I got released. I had about 8 hours to get to the halfway house because from federal prison, you go to a halfway house, and then you're going to be there for a period of 8 to 10, 12 weeks or so. So when they came and picked me up, they said, Chad, what do you want to do? And I said, I need to go get a Mountain Dew, right? I'm just dying for a Mountain Dew because I didn't have any soda when I was inside. It just, you wanted something from the house, but something about going up to the fountain machine, right? Just getting a cup of ice or
Right.
something it was. So I went and got a fountain, went to Circle K, and got a Mountain Dew. And on the way back home, back down to Phoenix, I said, let's stop at Jackie's bar. I want to see Jackie. And she had no idea that I was coming. She knew I was getting out that day. I did keep some conversation with her mom because, again, I always have a plan of what I'm going to do. Right? And that's part of the whole strategic stuff of getting in trouble or out of trouble or, drinking. I always had a plan, a way to get home. Sometimes it didn't work right, but I always had a plan. So I talked to her mom. If I talked to her mom and dad, I had a foot in the door still, right? So I didn't want to completely. I couldn't talk to Jackie, but I could still talk to her mom. I love her mom and dad to death. They're still to this day. So we go to the bar. It's noon. She always worked in the daytime. So I walk in, I opened up the door, and her back was to me. She was facing the grill, right? As she was getting done cooking some food, she turned around and she seen me. She goes, "Can I help you?" And when she looked up, she seen me. Right? She put the food down. She gave me a big hug. Of course, I gave her a big hug. She said, "Oh my God, it is so great to see you." I'm thinking like, "Hey, this is great to see you," because I didn't know I never knew. I didn't know. And this is everything that I've worked for, right? This is everything
Sure.
that I've wanted. Um, that night, she says, "How can I come see you tonight?" I said, "Well, I have to go to the halfway house." She said, "Can I bring you anything?" Yeah, you can bring me something. So I'm sitting there that night. She comes over. She brings me a cell phone. Right. Perfect. Now it's a token of communication, right? It was a token of communication for me. That's all we need. I need somebody to talk to. Right. And
Yeah.
hopefully I can inspire her again to get back into the feelings that we had before I left. Um, we've been together ever since.
Oh
Ever
my gosh,
since.
your lifeline, right?
Yep.
Your
Yep.
lifeline.
Everything. And it was tough at first. It was tough at first because, again, now I'm going back into her space. She said, Chad, you've changed. You've changed. Of course I've changed. I've changed for the better. I've changed for the better. Um, family stuff. It's hard now getting together. Family, she had kids prior, and not having any kids of my own was going to be one thing with my family. But at that time too, I said, I don't know if I deserve them because of all the knucklehead stuff. I think I wasted a little bit of my time of having my own kids. There's a lot of kids without fathers out there that need fathers. And this was a perfect time for me to become a father for them, So now, I'm not stepdad. I'm dad. I'm dad. I've raised all these kids since they were young. They know me as dad. They still talk to their dads and stuff too. But we have a great relationship. We got a great family. They've seen my situation. They know my situation. And so again, I'm here to raise a better future for them. And that's kind of what this whole transformation is about for me. It's about the kids. And I told the judge that when I got sentenced is that, you know what? I feel so apologetic and I have all the remorse for the kids that I hurt, not just directly from whether maybe mom and dad might have spent money away from the drugs, but just from taking the mom and dad away from whether they're drug dealers or drug users. And so even to this day in my life, it's all about giving back to the kids and informing them of how to become a better person when they get older.
And can you talk a little bit about what you're doing now? So now you're a CEO, and how are you giving back to the kids through this and
Yep. Yeah.
supporting
So,
kids like you?
for anybody that gets in trouble through incarceration at any age, it can be the kids that are in juvie right now, and it could be the kids that are in high school or that are grown up that are in the state systems or the federal systems. One of the biggest things that you have to have is you have to have a job. You have to have a job. And so I was very fortunate, as I said, my company that I worked with before, as soon as I got my first day back, I had a job. So I went back to do sports therapy, physical therapy with my company. I worked for them for the next 10 years, roughly. I worked for them for 10 more years after I was released. We built our family. We got married, here everything's going well. But you know what? I'm very optimistic, right? And I always like to keep growing, especially now with my new me and knowing my ability, my new transformation is that, the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. I'm not just kosher being an employee because I'm limited, right? I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to be able to provide for my kids. So I was coming home at times and it was kind of like it was a dead end job for me. And so Jackie, of course, was behind me as always. She says, well, why don't you start your own thing? That's kind of tough, I just, I don't know. I don't know. But again, if you have a plan with anything, you can make anything happen. So I sat down, I talked with her. I talked to some angel investors. I've talked to some different people. I tried to get money. What it boiled down to is I went to the banks, but I couldn't get money because I was a convicted felon. So they wouldn't give me a loan. Right. I applied for other jobs even before I done this and opened up Move. I applied for other jobs with medical device companies and medical sales. I did everything until I had to go to the background check and I had to pass the last background check. And they said, well, you're a convicted felon. We can't hire you. Right. And kids don't think about that. What we do as a young kid or even a young adult can actually hinder us in the future. So for me, I'm in full control of my life. And the only way to do that, even with the criminal record, is open your own business. But most
Yeah.
felons can't do that, right? It's hard. Again, I'm a different type, and I was the best. Like I always say, I was the best drug dealer or the best drug user because I worked my ass off, right? I'm always working, right? But that was what I was instilled with my youth as my dad and my work ethic and all that. So those are traits that I use to this day. So we opened up Move Human Performance Center in 2017. Jackie and I opened it up. Really, I opened it up. She's a bartender, as we know. But I got so busy here that she had to come help me, right? And so I kind of pulled her away from the bar. It was tough for us because now we have two incomes in one business, right? Which was a hard thing to do. We also were faced with COVID in 2020, right? And so COVID in 2020 was a hard thing. But again, I've seen lockdowns in society with COVID. I've seen lockdown in prison, right? And I wasn't going to panic. I wasn't going to be fearful of it all. We're going to keep going. So now here we are. This will be our 9th year in business. Move Human Performance Center. We do physical therapy. We do sports performance training. We do fitness stuff. I develop a lot of Arizona's top athletes from a youth standpoint. Teach them about character, right? The biggest thing. We teach them about integrity. We teach them about being relentless. We teach them the biggest things about choices. And I use the word choices all the time because when I got out of prison, I had to go to one more counseling class. And I thought, oh, here we go again. Hi, my name's Chad. I'm an alcoholic. I just got done with prison, 38 months, whatever it is, right? Introduce yourself. But when I went to this counseling class, it was something that changed my life forever as well. And it backed up everything that I was already thinking is that, Chad, you made bad choices. These are not you. You're not sick. You're just fighting this disease. And the disease was your failure to make the right choice, right? right? So when I went in there, he says, you know what? You're never going to hear me say the word addiction in this class. And I thought that was kind of crazy coming from a counselor, right? Because again, every day's coming back. They're going to talk about everything that we have with the medical side of it all, and the synapses in our brain, our firing, our neurons, and everything else going around. And he says, you're not going to hear me say that. He says, and I was in there with a lady that sold her kid for sex so she could go gamble. I was in there with some drug dealer users, needles. I mean, there was some bad people. Um, I'm looking around. I'm like, man, this is crazy. Because again, I don't have that bad of a story. I was just an entertainment kind of guy. But what he said is, he says it's all about choices. If I say that you're addicted to something, that means you're always going to relapse because you're never in control. So the realistic reason, if you do not want a haircut, don't go to the barber shop. If you don't want to gamble, don't go to the casino. And I thought, man, this is so easy. Nobody's ever told me I made bad choices, right? They just told me that I had a disease. I was addicted to drugs, or I was addicted to alcohol, or whatever. So at that point in time, it was my choice to be able to what I wanted to be. And so, for me, there's only two choices. It's yes or no. It's just that you have to be able to make these conscious decisions, and the impulse decisions that people are dealing with, it's hard. It's hard. It gets you put in a bad position. So at that point in time, I have on a tattoo on my arm that says, my every move is a calculated step. Make sure you think before you do, right? Because one bad choice can ruin your life. It did mine almost.
It sounds like you had support all along. You just, like you said, you made bad decisions. You didn't come from, um, parents that weren't there for you. It was just your choices. So I think that's a
Choices.
real interesting way of putting that. It's like you have a choice of where you go, whether you walk into that bar or not. And I wonder, like, where you are now with the move that you have. You talked. You've got physical therapy, but also the mindset therapy. It sounds like you have.
Yep.
How do you reach out to kids? Do you reach out to the, children, that community, and how they can, kind of handle those situations, or what they can learn from you?
Yeah, chapter one of my book is identity, right? It's all about self-identity. And in self-identity, too, when I talk about it, it's about who you are today, because your identity should be fluid. It's going to change every day, But I hear kids say, now this is just where I'm from, or this is where I have, this is just who I am. This is not who you are. You can grow daily. You can grow daily. And so I tell these kids, let's say that you're coming from a drug background where mom and dad used drugs, or you got a single household family. Just because your mom and dad did it don't mean you got to do it. My mom and dad's never done drugs. I should never do drugs. But indeed, my choices led me to go do something. Now let's put this vice versa. Here's a dad now when I have my boys and my daughter, and I'm sitting here telling them like, hey, do not do what I did, right? Because again, my parents, I did listen to them. Obviously, I did the opposite. So maybe it's going to work for my kids. I can't tell them to do what I did, right? Because again, don't go to prison. But my kids even got in trouble early on in their early teenage years. They have this in front that they know the destruction that it had to their family early by taking me away and putting me in prison. Why would they even risk it? Why would they even risk going away? My son was in juvie for a couple months, right? For doing stupid stuff. I'm like, and I'm sitting here thinking, because Jackie, she's like, this is not the life that I live. And if you're going to do this, we're not going to be together. But now fast forward a little bit, here's our kid doing the same thing. Right. And it's where my kid says now, he says, Dad, I knew everything that you did. I knew everything you got into it. And I understood that. He said, but I wanted to find out for myself that lifestyle. And some people do that all. And that's why I talk to the parents right now whether my kid's not listening to me. Kids aren't going to listen to your parents. They're going to make their own decisions. They are going to make their own decisions. And so when it says it takes a village, let me raise your kids and you raise my kid. And as long as we're around good people, we're going to have good kids, right? But again, they're going to make their own choices. So what we're here as parents, we're here to protect our kids, If they get in trouble, we got to protect them to make the right decisions so they don't go do it again. If they do happen to get sucked into a bad environment of a neighborhood or gangs or kids or whatever, we got to be able to pull them out and show them what there's a better future. There's a brighter future with better decision making. Right now, they're influenced by money. We know the answer is money. Right? And we see our moms and dads, we learn all that. As we get older, we learn through our parents and our peers, right? Now we have the parents and the peers. As we get to that later teen, we learn from our peers, and really those stages of learning in there is how we go across. You got to take the good, you got to take the bad from what you're learning. But then again, you got to be able to make the right choice, and again, that's the hardest thing I think for people right now is to make that right choice, just because the phone and, the society that we're in right now, it's opened up to where there's instant gratification every second of the day. I always say to struggle in the right direction. Success is a struggle, Open up the next text is a struggle, or switch a page, or when TikToks fails is a struggle. Everything's a struggle, but you have to be patient and you have to be able to make the right decision when it comes to a crunch time. Again, fight or flight. You got to make sure that you stay there and keep fighting.
And how does that mindset apply to how you work with these young athletes? You said you produce some of the top athletes going into college in Arizona. How do you apply these lessons to these, high achieving individuals?
Yeah, well, from a young age, especially now, whether it be basketball, football, girls football is a big thing now. Volleyball, we have a lot of it, is where their parents would tell them they're the best. You're good. You're good. You're number one. You're number one. So when they get to be in high school, they're maybe not the best player because now I always use the target. On the outside target, there's a big circle. And then on the inside of the bullseye, it's a small circle. Well, the reason why there's a big circle on the outside, because everybody can fit into it all. When we get into the center of it, it's a small circle. Only the few that are dialed in are on the inside of it all, which is also life. There's a bunch of knuckleheads on this outside circle, and on the inside of one, there's a very select few that are in there. Well, that's what I try to do right now is I try to get them to advance to inner circle a lot quicker, because when you get to high school, you're going to have other competitors there. You might not be number one. You might be number two. I had no idea what I was going to be when I walked into prison. I heard there's gangs. I heard there's violent people. I heard there's good people. I was in there with some white collar crime. There's a lot of smart people in federal prison. They just got caught, And so what I teach these kids at a young age is that, everybody talks about culture right now. Culture is the biggest word. We got culture. But culture does not happen if you don't have a character. And so it all for me boils back down to character. A good character can produce a good culture. Bad character produces a bad culture. And, we see with the football games this weekend, everything going on is that culture wins. Culture wins. And a lot of times it's the good culture that wins. You have to have people that buy in. You have to have people that listen to you. I put my story out there for everybody to know is that, it's very easy to get caught up. As a player or as a kid, not even playing sports, as a coach, I've got the kicker from the University of Michigan that's here right now getting ready for the NFL. And, I talked to him about his coach and, his coach had some allegations this year and had some things going on with the student at the school, and it happens at all different levels. And so at the end of the day, it's all about choices, and so if they choose to be great and they choose to put the work in, hey, go ahead. Come down here and again, you got to have confidence. They have to have confidence, because they got to be confident making the wrong decision or even making the right decision. But everything starts with how do you build the culture? It has to have a good character, and be able to have a good character. You have to be acceptance of your responsibility. So you got to be able to say yes or no.
Right. I love that. So what is, with Move, what does the future look like there?
For right now, we've grown from my wife and I. We always joke about our first Christmas party was like a date, right? It was a Christmas date
Yeah.
because it was just her and I going out. So, when during COVID, right before COVID happened, my buddy Kane came down. So we had our first employee. We opened up, we did have physical therapy. So right now we've got 8 employees that are here. We've expanded. So we went from 2,700 square feet to about 5,500 square feet. In the next 2 to 3 years, I want to have a bigger building so that we have another therapist that we want to bring on. And I want to continue to grow it. People always ask me, so Chad, are you going to have multiple locations of Move? Because it's the vibe. We have a vibe in here. We have an energy. It's just the things that I bring and my team that brings with us. All of my team that we have here, all my employees, we've all also overcame something in life. Whether it be an early single mother, whether it be, I have one girl, she saw a shooting down when she was in college in Miami. She's our PTA. My therapist here, that's our directive therapist. He's gone from playing at a high level basketball to going down to a D2, having some injury stuff happening. Other therapist, he moved out, he's from Australia. He came out here when he was 17 years old to go to college. Right. So he left his family in Australia, came out here. So we've all have something that we've overcome. And by doing that, our team, we give back to the community, right? And so everyone says, we have multiple locations. I said, no, we're going to have one because I want all of the positivity. I want all the optimism under one roof. I don't want to branch us and separate us at all. So we're going to continue to grow as a team. Obviously I wrote the book out, and so my book came out in November. It's my 10 codes to transform your life. It's great for all these athletes. I've got a lot of situational stuff that's in there talking about teams and different athletes that I've worked with over the time. And then also there's some of my stories that are in there. That's going to allow Move to get on a different platform as I speak nationally, and do some TEDx talks and do different things. But it's. I'm giving an example. We all look at people nowadays. I think everybody want to be a social media influencer. And I talked to my media guy. He says this is one thing that's different about me too. I'm not trying to be an influencer, right? I don't want anything to do with social media influencer. I'm here to be an inspirer. I want to inspire you instead of influence you. And those are two different words that are used in there. Most people want to do that, not me. I want to
Yeah.
inspire people. And so that's what my book is because, for people that have been in trouble, knowing that you could overcome something, you know, for a single moms, knowing that there's somebody that's going to be out there that's going to help you create the family or the love that you want. Any of the business owners that are out there that have to go through struggles of facing COVID and stuff, trust me, you can get through anything. So I wrote this book so that way I can help reach a lot of people. And a lot of it's too for kids, the early teens, the early people that are using this book. I want them to be able to read this book to know that their identity is going to be challenged when they get into high school, and when you make that change to go into colleges, you're going to be around some different groups of people that might be doing things that you're not supposed to be doing. It's okay to say no. It is okay to say no. I have a hard time saying no. Even to this day, I have a hard time saying no. That's part of my personality.
Yeah.
I'll do anything at any
People
point in
pleaser,
time.
sounds like. Are
But
you a people pleaser?
oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, people please. Well, my wife called me. My wife calls me Matt. She says your name's Matt. I said, where do you get Matt? She says, and you only have one T. I go, one T.
So
She
people
said,
walk
yeah, you're
all
like a doormat. You let people walk all
walk
over
all
you,
over
right?
over the
She said, you're not even strong enough to have two T's in your name like a real man. But I tell her, I said, that's not, I let people walk all over me. I'm here for people. There's a difference,
Right,
right?
right, exactly.
Because I need to be there for somebody because I needed somebody to be there for me, and I had a lot of people that were there for me. Again, I just had to weed out the ones, and that's the environment that we talk about. That's the people.
I love that. I think I've taken a couple of things from this. The first one definitely being that, we have choices. And the second being that in order to overcome adversity, it really just takes your inner willpower to make the decision to get through that and get past that. And I appreciate that.
Well, even as I go back into, like I said before, I don't like the word addiction. To recover from any type of substance abuse or to criminal abuse or whatever criminal activity, it starts with one clean day in a row, right? So I had AA people inside prison with me that were head counseling people, whatnot. When he got an automatic discharge, he went out and got drunk the first night. I know this. My inmate friend took him. When I have to go to AA meetings or had to go to AA meetings, there's 12 steps. I know it's a lifestyle. I know it's a whole program that goes there, but it's a 12-step program. For me, most people fall off on the 13th step because there's not one. And they relapse and they go back to step one, right? Because I got to start all over again. For me, I have a one-step program called One in a Row. It's one in a row for 365 days in a year, done over and over and over again. The hardest thing is to get started. Hardest thing for me was I got out was not to go back and have a drink. Right? Hardest thing was for me not to go back and do any criminal activity. It's so easy. This life I live now, and I say this all the time, is so easy because I don't have to look over my shoulder. I don't have to worry about some type of a thought altering my change, my plans, or my day. I am in control because I know today is day one. That every day is day
Right.
one. And as long as day one, every day is day one, you're never going to fall. So every day I treat as day one. And even with kids, today I just want you to be good in school. Sit down, pay attention, get your work done, do whatever. How did you do? I did it today. If you can, just like in football and in practices, if you can do it once, you can do it every time. So I take the same mentality that we have and I put that back into our actions, behavior.
I like that. One step at a time.
One step at a time. I love that's kind of, kind of think about like if you could give a message to somebody, and I think that just taking one day at a time is really that great message. But for someone that feels that's defined by their past, that's something hard. That's something hard to move forward with. And I think that, what you're talking about now is really hopefully people to not be defined by their past. Um, you know,
But it goes
and
back to the video game stuff.
yeah,
When we were kids growing up in the 80s, you had whatever, let's just say you're playing Donkey Kong and you had 12 levels. If you died on level 8, you had to start back on level 1. You had
yeah.
to start all over again.
Look ahead,
Nowadays,
maybe.
yeah. But now the kids get to play. They get to start right where they left off, so there's no consequences. So
Yeah.
they can beat the game because they don't have to start over again. I've had to start over many a times before in my life. But by doing that, it's like, you know what? I'm done starting over. Is really rock bottom is when you have everything taken away from you. It's your freedom. And I tell these people on the streets, you're not at rock bottom yet because you can still go get a Mountain Dew if you want to. I couldn't go get a Mountain Dew. You can still go to the bathroom without having five people around you. This rock bottom is inside there. But when we're doing all this, and again, it starts with the choices and everything that we have to do. You have to start from the day one. You have to be able to make that. And it's conscious decisions, but the outside influences for these kids right now, it's hard. It is very hard for them to do that. But you have to stay locked in every day. You have to stay locked in.
Right. And I think things like social media that we were talking about, it's not going anywhere. It's only going to
Is that
change and get more and
AI?
more AI. Yeah, now we're in a totally different, thing with
Mhm.
AI. So it's just learning how to work with it and how to live with it and make the best decisions within those parameters that we have
Yeah, well, and going
and that
back
our
to the
kids
video,
have.
yeah, and going back to the video game, it's like, life is continuing to move. We know that. Right? And again, that's hence the word move. That's our company. You got to keep moving. Everything, society's going to keep moving. So I tell kids, and I tell people I work with, especially because I'm living in the past. A lot of people live in the past. The different stages are things of the past and phases are things of the future. But a lot of people want to live in a stage of life, right? Remember when I was 13 years old and we went to Disneyland? Sweetie, we're not there no more. You're 24 years old. You got to figure out what you're going to do with your life. My daughter, she's still battling addiction stuff up and down. Bless her heart. We think about her every day. Someday I know she's living in a hotel or something. Some days I think she's living on the streets. She's been battling for 7 years. Right? Don't listen to dad. Dad's written a book. In the back of my book, I have a thing in there that said, Jade, I hope you're reading this book because I know this book is for you. Right? I don't know if she's going to read it. She said she's going to read it, but I haven't heard anything about it yet. But again, I can't help her, right? Because right now she's in this stage where she's a victim. She's a victim of things, right? And it's not going to be there. And I tell her, then you got to get to the next phase of your life. Once you leave this stage behind, level 26, I'm 51. I'm in 51st grade. I'm on my 51st stage, right? I'm always, always growing. But some people, they want to remember when we were adolescents. So we go back into that youth aspect of it all. Um, we don't grow. We don't grow, and your self-identity has to be fluid. You have to be better every day. If not, your self-identity is not changing and you're stuck in stages.
Yeah. I mean, you've given so much for us to think about and, going from, parents, you know what it's like to be a child that has parents that are there for you, but still making, those decisions, from your time, to, being in prison, but still having your life light and finding your wife. And now as a CEO and seeing what you're doing and writing a book, but yet you still are dealing with children that have addictions. So now you also know what it's like to be the parent,
Yes.
what your parents had gone through. So I think you've kind of covered all aspects and the feelings all the way around a full circle and why what you're saying is so, I think, meaningful and impactful for our listeners.
But even for the parents, and the audience of the parents that are out there, it's hard to see our kids do that. And I know exactly where my parents at, but we told my kids and we told the kids in the beginning, we're not going to enable you. We're not going to enable you. If you get in
Yeah.
trouble, you in trouble. That's on you. You're going to learn earlier than I did, right? You might have to sit there a little bit. Trust me, it's hard on my wife, to see our daughter out there and to have, and like I said, it's right now it's been kind of good and bad. We haven't had much, but it's been rough there for a little while. You always want to know if she's okay. Remember, my job
Yeah.
as dad is to protect your daughter.
Sure.
Right. And so when you hear she could be living on the streets or she's running around with different groups of people that you're not supposed to, trust me, I know what these groups of people do and I know how they are. Last thing I want to do, we pray all day long. So now only thing that we can do is you got to be there for each other as parents and understand that, you know what, we're here. We don't want to get that call one morning. We want to see her make this change. I know her feelings because I was in her feelings. I was in those running the streets and trying to score drugs at night and hustle and go do whatever I could do to make money. I understand what she's doing. But at the same time, too, I understand what it's like to get clean and to have all of that happen and have everything come together where you can build your personal value personal self-wealth up, your esteem, your confidence. And then again, like I said, you can become a CEO of your own business. There's opportunities out there. This is a land of opportunity. And I think if these kids can do it, they got to be creative. They have a bigger creative side than what we had as growing up inside. And so when you use that properly, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a physical therapist, but I own a physical therapy clinic. That's been one of my things. So how do you do that? I'm going to hire the physical therapist to come work with us and we're going to have a great team. Right? But most people say that's not traditional, Chad, because a physical therapist has to open up a physical therapy clinic. That's what you believe, right? But it doesn't have to happen. So I've been able to make it work, speaking with the different athletes that come down here, I can speak with them in the little hood stuff if we need to, because some of them come from the inner city. And then I have my CEOs like we can talk about business about, so you have to know your audience, and you have to know who you're working with and talking with. So, the kids have to have hope. And for us, all parents, and for us, teachers and counselors and anybody else that are going to try to help lead a better future, it's about giving them the direction and tell them that they're going to struggle. It's going to be a struggle. It's hard to piss your friends off, or it's hard not to go do something stupid when your friends are doing it. That's hard because you don't want to be signaled out. You don't want to be called out. But at the end of the day, right, when you make that right choice, everything falls in line.
And I think community too. I would just like to stress that, you're talking about a system that's maybe not always working. And so I think that something is not to judge parents that have children that are going through this. Instead, be there for them and be a community. I can't stress that enough because there's a lot of parents that are going through stuff that you might not know about. And just, I think, being there for them and being a listening ear and just non-judgment, because it could happen to any parents.
Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned that. So writing this book, I was very vulnerable. I wrote my whole story out there. I put my whole story. Obviously, as a business owner, I got to be very cautious. I did not let nobody. I held it in for a long time, just because again, working with kids, I didn't want them to know of convicted felon, drug charges, whatever. But again, being there for everybody. Writing a book, they said, who do you want to write this book for? I said, I want to write it for people overcoming substance abuse, alcohol, DUIs, criminal background, single mothers and fathers. There's a lot of people I want to write this book for. And they said, you know what, Chad, that's perfect, but you're going to sell it to nobody. I said, well, what do you mean? They said, if you write a book for everybody, you sell it to nobody. But if you write a book for that one person, you'll sell it to everybody. Right. So when I wrote my book, Mind Over Virtually Everything, there's something that's in there for every person. Right. And so far, with the readers I have that have come up and given me the reviews and talked to me about the book, there's something in there for every one of them, because we all go through the same stuff. We all go through the same stuff, It's just that some of us, we want to hold it in, and some of us, obviously now we get to let it out. I can tell you that if you are a parent going through some stuff, let it out and find somebody that you could talk with. When I was able to get that weight off my back, I was 100 pounds lighter,
Yeah.
and you didn't have to worry about things, But again, we're in a society where people are quick to judge. They're quick to judge us. They're quick to judge our kids. They're quick to judge everything. So you just got to have a good group around you and become the best version of yourself you can. It's hard, but it's one in a row.
You just given us so much to think about, and just really appreciate your story, your honesty. Um, yeah, I just thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming in and being so honest with us.
I took action. And when you take
Yeah.
action, that's when you take control of everything else. And so by taking action of yourself and taking responsibility, you'll make the right choices. You'll change the behavior and become the person you want to.
First step, right?
First step. First step's the hardest one. First
Yeah.
step's the hardest one. Or it's also the longest one because I never get off of it. It's always step one every day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not complicated. It's not complicated. You got to do it once. If you can do it once,
Right.
like I tell everybody in sports, in life and everything else, you can do it every time.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Keep it
Love that.
simple.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you so
Yep.
much, Chad, for meeting with us today. And like Colby said, sharing your story and your honesty. We're really grateful and enjoyed the chat.
We have to get to people's hearts, right? And when you do that, people have compassion. And when you have compassion for yourself and compassion for others, I think our society, our future is going to be a lot brighter.
What a perfect way. I love that, Dan. Compassion,
Compassion. That's what it's
especially
all
now. We
about.
need to hear that. Have compassion.
Yep. Yep.
So wonderful. And we'll make sure on our website at themindfulmike.com to have your book
Yeah.
and information on you so people can get a hold of it and read it themselves.
Awesome. Yep. Mindovervirtualeverything.com, or it's available on Amazon, and Chad Dunn 22. Those are the Instagram tags that you can look at.
Great.
And, we'd love to thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'll make sure to have that all so people can start following you. So
Yes.
thank you
Yep.
so much, Chad. We
Nope.
really
Thank you,
appreciate your
Colby.
time.
Nope. Thank you, Colby. Thank you, Grace, for having me as well.
Okay, we'll talk
Bye,
later.
Chad.
Bye bye.